Hello, welcome, Dean here again from groundbreakcreative.com. Today we are teaching you how to change your bass strings and how to do it properly. None of this is going to go out of tune because I've got new strings. That is a load of rubbish. That means the strings haven't been put on properly, and we're going to show you exactly what you need to do after the strings have gone on to make sure that that doesn't happen. Once we're done here, I'm going to chuck this in the case. The only thing that's going to affect the tuning after that is temperature, or if I change it physically here. Part of that is having good machine heads, but it's also largely the way you put the strings on. Today we're going to be using my favourite bass string, which is Roto Sounds. They didn't pay me to say that, but they probably should. Anyway, I've used a bunch of different bass strings. I always find myself coming back to Roto Sounds. They've just got great tone in them. Yeah, but comment below what your favourite string is. Interested to hear what other people are using. So anyway, I'm going to drop this thing down and we will get into changing some strings. Okay, so a couple of things to check before we get started here. First thing I want to look at is my action, which is probably a bit hard to see on this camera, but what I'm looking at is how close my strings are to my frets down this end. Okay, so you see that gap there. If there's a massive gap at this end, like these strings are sitting out off the neck quite a long way, then I'm going to want to adjust my neck. The reason for that is those sticking out a long way there is going to make it harder to play. Now there are measurements that we can take. Just look up setting your action, but if it's already been set up and you're using the same gauge strings, you're probably not going to need to adjust it. I always just take a look first, and to be honest, when I do it, I just tweak it a little bit. A little bit of experience, you know how far to turn, but there are ways to take measurements to make sure you set it up right, because if you bend the neck back too far with the truss rod, you're going to end up with frets buzzing and that sort of thing. Cool. The other thing that we want to check is intonation. So intonation refers to, basically, if I play E here and here, that those are both an E. Not this is an E and this is halfway between E and F. Right? So we'll just grab a tune. We're going to plug in. We're just going to make sure that this is set right before we start. Otherwise it's something we can adjust while we're doing the strings. A little bit cold in here today, so make sure that's on an E, and that's bang on an E as well. Okay, there's a lot of people say to do this harmonically. Sometimes that works, sometimes you'll get a different note. I'm always interested in what the note is when I play it, because when I'm playing up here, I'm not playing harmonics. So I want to know when I play an E, it's an E. Same with the A, D, G, and of course a low B if you've got that one. Cool. So this one actually, if I play that, is a little bit sharp. So we can adjust that back. Basically, with our fine adjustments at the end here, these are going to adjust our intonation. So if I make the string longer, it's going to give it a lower tone. It's going to flatten the note. So what I need to do is just adjust this guy back a little bit, so it makes that string a little bit longer, and then that's going to hit the intonation right. But I'm going to recheck that once I've got the new strings on. Okay, I just know in the back of my mind that that's something I need to look at. Right, so let's get into getting these strings off. I always like to play the string just as I'm doing it, just so I know that I turn the right way. I'm just going to make it loose enough that I can pull that out, and then I'm going to grab my wire cutters. So this is what I like to use. We call them side cutters here, they're also called wire cutters. They are just handy, nice and easy to get into the ends of things, like especially when you've got to cut string ends and stuff. More with guitar. I'll show you how we're going to do these. They're going to be pre-cut, so we don't have to worry about that. But I just cut the bent bit stuff off the end so I get a nice straight end. So when I pull back through the body, which I actually don't need to do on this one. I'm thinking of my electric guitar. But if you have a pull through body, it pays to cut that off like that. So as you pull it through, it's not going to get caught up and it's not going to scratch anything. Okay, but this Ibanez here actually just has a hooked bridge where we can just unhook the strings at the other end, which is good because that is nice and quick. Okay, now opening the packet. If I've got something on the back of a packet like this that tells me what my ball ends are, it's not really going to matter with bass strings, but if it was guitar strings, I want to leave that part of the packet intact so I can see it, because it just makes it quicker trying to find the string you were looking for. There we go. So I'm going to start with my high G. And we're just going to hook that in at the bridge end. So different guitars will have different bridges. Sometimes they will pull through the body. Sometimes they're like this that you can hook into. Sometimes they'll pull through the bridge. It's not really rocket science down this end. Just yeah, look at how your old ones came out. The technical stuff is all at this top end here that we need to get right. Well, we need to get that end right too. The thing at this end is just make sure that is pulled right in, especially in a pull through body. Make sure that it's pulled right in, that you haven't pulled it up and then bent it over and then kind of set it there, and then when you try and tune it up, it's going to pull through more. Make sure it's pulled right up. And let's go back a bit there. This end here, I'm just going to come past sort of a couple of inches there, and then I'm going to cut that off. Get rid of that. And then with this, there's a hole in the center of here. We're going to poke the string right down into that hole, and then we're going to bend it over at a right angle, and then we're going to bend it back against the tuning peg there, and then we will start bringing the tension up. So as we wind up the tension, I'm holding the string here, and I'm going to keep tension on it as it winds up as much as I can. And then I want to get down so I can see the path that the string is taking, making sure that I'm not winding it back on top of itself. But from there I want to start coming down the tuning peg, and I don't want to leave gaps. I want to wind it in right next to the piece of string above it, so that they're nice and snug together. Okay, so this is what we're going to end up with. in the right spot. So see how they're wound nice and close next to each other, with the string centered down the middle of the peg there. Okay, so now if I'm not going to pull that up to tuning now. We're going to worry about that at the end when everything's on. If I try and play that now, it's going to buzz like anything. But the reason for that is because there's no tension on the neck yet. As we add the thicker strings, the tension on the neck, and as we tune it up, the tension on the neck will pull up, and that will come away from the neck. Cool, so we are going to repeat the process. Now, as the strings get thicker, you'll be able to fit less and less on here, but at this stage I'm still a couple of inches past. It's fine. Probably not even a couple of inches. We actually use metric measurements here. I'm just trying to talk in inches for the sake of our American viewers, which of course are our largest group of viewers. Hello to everyone in the United States today, from New Zealand. Okay, so with this low B here, because of the way this one's set up, it's not going to take us very long to run out of our winding here. We're going to get into the fat part of the string. So I'm probably not going to have a lot of room on the machine head there. So I'm just not going to have quite as much here. Although if you're unsure, like all things, it's better to cut it too long and then have to shorten it, than to cut it too short and have to buy a new string. Which, I don't know about where you are, but it's very hard to buy these strings individually here, which means you have to buy a whole new set. Which these ones in New Zealand are about $50 New Zealand. So what would that be in American? Probably about 35-ish bucks US. Roughly, don't quote me. Cool, okay, so now our strings are physically on the bass. So you can see how nice and tidy this all is. At this end, there's no string ends sticking out. It's all very nice and clean with those strings all located properly into the machine heads. Nice and tidy. Let's get tuning. Right. This is what I was talking about at the start, where we talked about You know how people say, oh, it's going out of tune because I've got new strings. This is where people are getting it wrong, so keep watching. Okay, so that's a fairly rough tune-up, and now here is the important bit. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to lay this thing down, and we're going to chuck our hand under the string there. Remember, these are bass strings, they're nice and strong, and we're just going to pull it up, and we're going to slide our hand all the way along to the top and back and up and back. So what that's doing, three things kind of. Okay, so what we're doing is, one, we're stretching the string. So if there's any stretch that's going to happen in the string, we're doing that, but we're also doing it evenly across the string. Okay, so that's the first thing we're doing. The second thing we're doing is, if there's any looseness in the way the string is wound here, we're pulling that up nice and tight. Okay, so we're taking any slack out of there, and then depending on the bridge setup, we're potentially doing the same thing at the bridge end. Alright, so we're just going to do this over all of the strings, and then we're going to retune. And then we're going to do it again. So the idea is that we repeat this process until they stop dropping their tune. Okay, so there will come a point where you'll tune it, you'll do this again, and then it'll still be in tune after you've done it. Okay, so that is now holding its tune. So now you see, if I can do that to it and it's still going to hold its tune, it's not going to fall out of tune while I play it. But what I am going to do is I'm going to practice today. Tomorrow I will play live, but today I will practice for a couple of hours, and then I will recheck the tuning and make sure that it hasn't dropped. Like I say, you'll always get changes with temperature. On a hot day, the string will flatten. On a cold day, it will sharpen, just because the string, well, the low ones especially, because they're thicker, will either expand or contract depending on the temperature, which you're probably used to by now. So now the other thing we're just going to recheck is that intonation, and I will just recheck it on all the strings. So that low B is still a little bit sharp, so let's adjust that. So to start with, I'm just going to let my tuning off a little bit, and then I need to find the correct tool to adjust in the back there. So this one's nice and simple. It's actually a Phillips screw. That's pretty rare. Normally they would be an Allen key of some sort. But I want to detune it a little bit, so I take the tension off the string, so that it's not hard to pull that, if that makes sense, especially because I'm going to be pulling it backwards. I don't want it to have to fight against the tension on the string coming down here, otherwise I'm going to wreck that screw, whatever it is, trying to force this tension, where with the tension off the string it should be fairly easy to move. So we've got our screwdriver there. Try and do this in the mirror, and if I screw that in, you probably can't see it moving, but this here is moving back, and I'm guessing how far I'm going. I don't need to go all the way up. Just move it a bit, and then I need to retune the string. Make sure we're pulled in all nice and tight again. So we're still a bit sharp there. So I'm going to adjust again. And basically it's a matter of going back and forward until you get it in the right spot. But I know how far I moved it before, and I came about halfway of what I wanted to be. So if I move it that much again, I should get it about right. Little bit of mechanical logic for you. That's my day job, by the way, mechanic. We're pretty close. Just a little bit more, I think. And generally, the way your bridge is going to look is something like this. It's going to step its way back as the string gauges get thicker. The bridge is going to be further back as they come up. And there we go, got it. Cool, so that is how to restring your bass. Obviously if you've got a 4-string or a 6-string, you either have one less string or one more string to do, but otherwise everything else is exactly the same. So you can just recheck that action again, make sure it's right. You want to make sure that your frets aren't buzzing. Normally you'll get fret buzz when you play these frets down here. And if you're getting fret buzz, then look back at setting up action. You can do that off measurements. If you're a bit unsure, maybe take it into the shop, get someone to do it for you. But that's done with the truss rod adjustment in here. Truss rod is basically a bent rod that goes the length of the neck and pulls the neck back or forward. But if you don't know what you're doing with those adjustments, get them done professionally, or at least make sure that you look up the measurements. Once you've done it a few times and you get a feel for it, then you can get an idea how to just quickly sort of tweak it for changes without having to set everything up to measure it. Cool, so I hope that has helped you today. Please remember to click subscribe, and we will see you next time.